Hello, I'm Kate Olguin, and I'm here to walk you through this Fallout 4 dungeon that I made. So my goal with this dungeon was to make something that matched the flavor and style of other Fallout 4 dungeons. My favorite dungeon or levels in video games tend to be the ones that are a fun little play and a recognized theme or idea, so I decided to pick Prom for Raiders. So you enter this lobby where you can see two doors, one above on a balcony and one below. The one below is chained from the other side, and you can hear music coming from inside, so the player knows that something's happening in there, and that also gives them the clue, hey, I'm going to be inside that room at some point, and that gives them something to anticipate. That's also what the door above is for. It tells the player that at some point they're probably going to be up there and go in there, so it's, a thing to keep in the back of their mind and work towards. The path to the right is blocked off, and if you look really carefully, you can see through the blockade that there's a turret over there, so that's something to watch out for in the future. I always think it's nice when levels reward players with hints of what to look out for or what's to come when they pay attention, so I've tried to sprinkle bits of that throughout this level. So, the only free path is over to the left. There are some can chimes here, which tell the player to watch out and that there are probably some raiders nearby, so it's a good idea to be stealthy. Around this corner and over this blockade are two raiders hanging out who will be the ones most alerted by the can chimes, and they have plenty of good cover if they attack the player from this angle. The hope here is that the player will think, alright, I'll get back to them later when I have a better strategy since taking them on right now might not be the best idea. So, in here is the little area where you get your tickets to Prom with our first terminal. The terminals all contain protocols for Prom and correspondence between Trent and Susan, the Prom organizers. They serve as both flavor text and can also provide key information, so in this case they tell the player to watch out for turrets when they reach the bar area. Next up is the little gift shop. So here's where the player can stock up on weapons and ammo if they've come into the dungeon unprepared. There's a range of weapons to accommodate for a range of player combat styles, so we have a shotgun, a bat and a knife, a pipe revolver, and some grenades. There's a raider here who's usually facing away from the player's entrance, so they can be taken by surprise if the player is careful, and if the player isn't careful, there's a lot of cover they can hide behind. Once the player leaves the gift shop, they'll come out behind those raiders that they saw at the front behind the blockade, and they can ambush them now with the benefit of a better line of sight and the fact that the raider's cover doesn't work as well from this angle. If they follow the lights, they can find an ammo box and a medkit with some useful supplies as well. Now we enter the dining area. This was one of the areas that I especially tried to use the Fallout humor and flair in. Each table has a little theme, so one has bowls of cereal, one is full of different steaks, the most haphazard table has chems, and it looks like there's going to be some cannibalism happening with that last one. There are three entrances to the bar area next to the dining area, and two of them are guarded by the turrets mentioned in the earlier terminal, though it's possible to sneak by them. There are also two raiders hanging out here. It's possible to go through the double doors for the easiest path past the turrets and directly to the raiders, but you have to pick the lock, so either path you'll have to use some sort of skill. In the cash register is the key to the second floor. Next we have a brief reprieve as we enter the dressing room reception area, featuring a new terminal that has some flavor text for the dead raider on the table. The next area, the dressing room itself, has several can chimes to warn the player that there are enemies in this room to be wary of if they can't already see them. There's a bunch of shelves and aisles to take cover behind, and there's a turret on the far end. There's also a power armor stand here to give the hint to the player that there might be someone with power armor coming up later in the level. There's also a weapon workbench and armor workbench here in case the players want to put any of the junk in this dungeon to good use, and a toolbox to give them some extra supplies if they do. The door to the second floor is locked, so if they haven't already, the player will have to get the key from the bar cash register. On to the second floor! This terminal gives the player a hint of what's to come. It tells the player that there's a petting zoo coming up and that there are feral dogs in it, and also that there's a dangerous animal called Flopsy. It also tells the player that Trent and Susan have a bunch of regular dogs that will be with them. Additionally, there's some cages here to give the player a chance to scope out the room a little bit while taking cover before they have to engage in combat. This is an area called Pose and Photo, which is meant to be a mixture of a sort of diorama and photo booth. So there's a beach section and a pre-war section. There are three raiders hanging out in here, and I thought that the sort of weird terrain and furniture of the dioramas would provide an interesting, more open battlefield. Next up is the petting zoo. After a few open rooms, I thought it would be nice to change it up and have some close quarters combat. There are 3 sets of animals here, and the sets of cages ramp up in difficulty. The first are some mole rats, the second are some feral dogs, which as you can see here have made a meal of their handler, and the last is a stunted Yao Guai named Flopsy, who's had a snack on a ragtag. There's a medkit embedded in the wall of the Yao Guai cage, since I'm presuming that the players might need to heal up a bit after that. So, something I haven't had the chance to mention yet is that I wanted to make this level using only the assets the creation kit gave me, which meant that I had to use what was already there to establish the prom flavor. I wanted to convey that the prom king and queen were coming up, but I couldn't quite figure out how, so I used a collage of signs rotated slightly and covered up by other signs to spell out queen and king and an arrow pointing to where they are. I also did that in every instance that prom was spelled out. I felt like that was a good way to use what I was given while also tapping into the sort of Mod Podge post-apocalyptic Fallout flavor. You can see that there's also a sign here that says stay back that's visible from the cage exit. That's to signify this turret hiding over here. There's nearby cover so that if they miss that signifier and get shot at, they should be able to hide and reassess their situation pretty quickly. Over here is the last terminal, which tells the player that the next room has Trent and Susan in it, who are the prom king and queen. Finally, the player rounds the corner to encounter Trent, Susan, and their pack of dogs. This is another open combat area with a bunch of places for cover, and the player has to deal with the close quarters combat style of the dogs and the long range combat of Trent and Susan. Trent is a legendary raider, and Susan is in raider power armor, so they're the most difficult enemies in the level. Once the prom royalty are defeated, in this loot chest, among other goodies, is a mini nuke launcher and some mini nukes. You'll see what they're for in a moment. Round the corner, and we're back at the lobby, and we can finally go through the tantalizing balcony door. Inside, we see a bunch of well-dressed raiders dancing around. You can whip out the launcher and blow them all to smithereens from above in one go, or if you'd rather not use the mini nukes, there are plenty of grenade bouquets to harvest from that will finish the job. Head on down after the carnage and you'll find the chained door from the lobby, and you're right back to where you started, so you can leave. That's Raider Prom. Thanks for letting me walk you through my design process. Cheers!